If you practice speaking in an even tone, try saying 3 free throws, strange strategic statistics, or another difficult phrase repeatedly until it becomes easy. Repeat these exercises a few times per day. 25. Here's another exercise that will help you develop a sharper, cleaner voice. Moving up and down your vocal range, say, ni, 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 ni 10 times over. Repeat this exercise daily. 26. 3. Cut out any verbal tics. I used to say a lot. At the time, I knew that I didn't sound as confident as I would have liked, but I had no idea that it was so noticeable until a friend kindly pointed it out. I was embarrassed at the time, but she helped me realize that if I wanted to be taken seriously, I'd have to work on eliminating my verbal tic. Aside from other frequent offenders include like, yeah, and you know. They are okay in moderation, but if you use them repeatedly, your listeners will assume that you aren't really sure what you are talking about. If you happen to have any video or audio recordings of yourself lying around, watch or listen to them. Count the number of times you use the words and phrases listed above. The results might surprise you, but they will spur you to action. If you don't have any material to work with, ask a friend to make a discreet recording when you are distracted. 5. Stick to short sentences and choose short words where possible. Whatever the education level of your audience, they will find short sentences easier to digest. Use technical terms if necessary, but pick short words if it's practical to do so. Ideally, you should speak in sentences that you can get through on a single breath. 27. 6. Master the art of the pause. Effective speakers know that pauses lend extra weight to their message. For example, a brief pause between 2 points provides your audience with a chance to appreciate their importance. Pausing after a rhetorical question will give them a moment in which to consider the broader point you are making. 7. Vary the pitch and tone of your voice. Keeping your voice relatively low will make you sound more authoritative. However, speaking in a monotone will just bore everyone around you. Let yourself express some emotion. For example, it's fine to raise your voice in surprise or to adopt a softer tone when comforting a friend. Put it into practice today. I'm assigning you 2 challenges. Exercise I. Make sure you have at least 10 minutes to yourself, or else those around you might assume you've gone crazy. Find an article or book and read it aloud for a minute. Record yourself speaking, then listen to it. Pay attention to your volume and pitch. We don't tend to really listen to the sound of our own voices, so you may be in for a shock the first time you play it back. Appraise your voice. Do you speak softly, loudly, or somewhere in between? Are you high-pitched, low-pitched, or average? Using your recorder, experiment until you know how it feels to speak in a steady, even voice at a relatively low pitch. Try the vocal exercises outlined above. Exercise 2. The second challenge is to practice speaking in a different tone of voice when in conversation. If you already know the other person, don't change your tone completely, they will just want to know why you suddenly sound completely different. Most of us can't help but respond differently to voices of varying pitches and inflections. You may be surprised at how everyone around you reacts. Day 12, focus on behavior, not character. Today's challenge won't just improve your communication skills, it'll also give your social intelligence a boost. You're going to learn a simple trick that will help you resolve arguments, get your needs met in a relationship, and stay on everyone's good side. Do you happen to know someone who seems popular with everyone, yet at the same time refuses to sugarcoat the truth? These folks have the ability to give criticism without making enemies and to patch up any disagreements within minutes. I had a boss like this a few years ago. Everyone respected him. He had a reputation as a straight shooter and could be a bit blunt sometimes, but he was pretty popular. I'd watch him carefully in meetings, trying to work out how he got the balance right. He was calm and polite, but I sensed there was more to it than that. One day, I worked up the nerve to ask him for a few tips. I had recently moved into a management position and was trying to learn how to call out unacceptable behavior in my team without earning myself a reputation as a mean or harsh boss. Ah, he said. One rule. Focus on their behavior, not their character. I asked him for an example. Well, he went on, last week I had to write someone up for wasting a lot of time on social media when he should have been working on a big project. He was being lazy. But I never used the word lazy and I never implied that he was wasting time. Instead, I talked about the facts. I explained why his conduct was inappropriate. I talked about the exact number of hours that he'd been spending online, and I actually had a printed copy of his contract on the table during our meeting. It clearly stated that he was not allowed to use company networks for personal communication. He agreed he'd messed up, and that was pretty much the end of it. In hindsight, it sounded so obvious. My boss didn't assassinate anyone's character. All he did was take a moment to gather his evidence and ascertain the facts. He focused on what someone had actually done rather than their personality or attitude in general. He spelled out the consequences someone would face if they didn't change their behavior, but he never took the opportunity to rip someone apart. This doesn't just work in professional settings. Use it whenever you need to call someone out on their behavior. It's an awesome technique because it stops people from getting defensive. 28 If you start analyzing their personality and passing harsh judgments on their character, you will find yourself drawn into an argument about what they are really like. This is a total waste of time and will harm the relationship. Let's take a look at two examples that show the value in emphasizing actions and consequences instead of personality and threats. Example 1. Your teenage son's room is a mess. You want him to clean it up. Don't say, "Your room is a total mess. I can't believe how lazy you are. You'd better get it straightened up right now, or you'll be in trouble." Instead, you could say, "Your room is messy and needs a cleaning. This is my home, and you must respect that. I expect you to have cleaned it by the weekend, or you will not be allowed to use the car on Friday night." Example 2, you are a manager. A member of your team has been late 3 mornings over the past 2 weeks, and you want them to start turning up for work on time. Don't say, "You obviously don't care about your job, and you are letting the team down. Start getting here on time." Instead, you could say, "You have been late 3 times over the past 14 days. As you know, it is important for the sake of the team's performance that everyone is here on time. If you are late again, you will receive a written warning. By the way, this doesn't have to be a conversation about a serious, life-altering event. For example, let's suppose that a friend asks you out for dinner but then asks you to pay for everything. They promise that they will pay you back once payday comes around, but then they don't make contact. This leaves you feeling hurt and underappreciated. You might be thinking, so-and-so is really selfish. They always take people for granted. However, using the approach outlined in this chapter, you'd talk only about their actions. Telling them that you think they are a selfish leech might be satisfying for a few seconds, but is it going to help your friendship? Nope. Stick to the facts. If you have to make a request, in this case, for your money, keep calm. Focus on what you want, why you need it, and the time frame in which you expect it to happen. Finally, there's another advantage to this technique. When you talk about someone's behavior as opposed to their character, you are signaling that it's what they do, rather than who they are, that matters. This can encourage them to try harder in the future, especially if you also take care to compliment them on everything they have done right. 29 Whether they admit it or not, most people thrive on praise. Positive acknowledgement always goes down well. Put it into practice today. You are going to have a conversation with someone who has recently hurt or inconvenienced you. This serves two purposes. First, it will help clear the air and get your relationship back on track. Second, it will give you the opportunity to practice talking about a problem in terms of someone's actions. You are not going to make character judgments, create drama, or drag up the past just for the sake of hurting them. Day 13, uncover your communication background. You have control over your communication style. If I didn't believe that we all have the potential to become better communicators, I wouldn't have bothered writing this book. However, there's no getting around the fact that the way you were raised has affected the way you talk to others and how you conduct yourself in relationships. It's human nature. We are wired to imitate our parents, or whoever was in charge of our well-being, because they were our first role models. Sigmund Freud held a lot of weird ideas, but he was right when he said that our early years play a key role in shaping our adult personalities. 30 I believe that self-knowledge, plus action, of course, is a solid foundation for change. It can help you work your way around blocks or personal resistance. For example, you might realize that it makes sense to expand your vocabulary or talk in a more confident manner, because doing so improves your relationships and social standing. However, you may feel as though something is holding you back. In these cases, it's a good idea to dig a little deeper and think about your underlying beliefs about who you are and how you should communicate affect you. For instance, if your parents taught you that others will see you as arrogant or overbearing when you are confident, it shouldn't come as a surprise when you feel a resistance to change. The story of Jenny. Let me tell you about a client of mine. Jenny was in her mid-30s, a successful lawyer who had been told by her work mentor that she was well on the way to being made a partner at her firm. The problem? Her mentor advised her that her promotion was unlikely to happen until she learned to become more assertive with the firm's biggest clients. Jenny had read books on assertiveness and even attended a seminar, but she still lacked the kind of confidence that would take her career to the next level. "I don't get it," Jenny said in our first session together. "I know what I need to do, but something inside me just freezes up when I need to stand up for myself or argue against someone with a lot of power. Why can't I put what I learned in the seminar into practice?" At the time, I was starting to delve into developmental psychology and felt inspired to tackle the problem from another angle. "If you don't mind," I said, "could you tell me about how your parents used to communicate with you?" Our conversation then went like this: "Jenny, normally, I suppose. You know, whatever normal means. They were pretty patient most of the time. Occasionally, my father lost his temper. Sometimes my mother would sulk if she couldn't get her way. Both of them had their own friends. Their social skills are okay. Me, all right. Would you say they were assertive people?" Jenny: "No, yes. My father was quite assertive. If someone annoyed him, he'd always tell them. But my mother seemed to think, well, she didn't say so, but." Me: "But?" Jenny: "She didn't seem to think girls should cause anyone any bother, if you see what I mean. She never told me that women shouldn't be assertive, but now that I think about it, all her friends are the passive-aggressive type. I don't think she approves of strong women. She always praised me most when I was entertaining myself or being nice and quiet." As we talked further, it became apparent that Jenny's mother modeled a passive-aggressive communication style. Jenny told me that her mother's sister had been much more straightforward and transparent, but unfortunately her aunt lived far away and was not available as a role model. Her mother was the only consistent female figure in her life, so she was the one who taught Jenny how to communicate with others. If Jenny's father had been her primary caregiver, she would probably have learned to use a more assertive communication style. Social learning theory predicts that we adopt the behaviors and attitudes of the adults we spend the most time with. 31 In this case, Jenny's mother was her main caregiver, so it was always more likely that Jenny would imitate her. No wonder Jenny felt awkward when she tried to be assertive. It went against her early training. The good news is that Jenny realized that she didn't have to be a replica of her mother. Once she figured out why she felt so uncomfortable when speaking up for herself, the answer motivated her to forge her own communication style. I encouraged her to watch a couple of more assertive female lawyers in her firm and use them as new behavioral models. A few months after we started working together, Jenny got her promotion. A few questions to ask yourself. Imagine that you and I are sitting in a coaching session right now. This is a list of the questions I'd ask you. Take your time when thinking about your answers, they can help you understand the lessons you've carried into your adult relationships. 1. Did my parents have solid social skills? It's simple. If your parents knew how to create healthy relationships with others and sustain a good conversation, you probably picked up these skills. If not, you probably find social situations a bit confusing. This can cause you to doubt yourself and to feel shy around new people. 2. Did my parents have friends? While it's natural to prefer a larger or smaller social circle, it isn't normal to be completely friendless. If your parents never showed interest in other people, you may be confused by the rules of normal social interaction and might not know how to respond when other people show an interest in you. 3. Did my parents pass on any rules when it came to communication or relationships? As the case of Jenny proves, our parents' communication rulebook can come to be a defining factor in our social lives. These rules don't even have to be stated up front. Children pay more attention to what adults do than what they say. If it's a toss-up between learning from words or learning from actions, it's the actions that carry more weight every time. 4. Did my parents show me how to make up after an argument, or settle a difference of opinion? Disagreements are inevitable in any close relationship. If we don't understand how to understand someone's point of view, or how to reconcile following a fight, any kind of dispute will feel frightening. 5. Did my parents encourage me to express myself? I've worked with a lot of clients who don't even have the vocabulary to say how they feel. Obviously, this means they run into trouble in their relationships, because they don't have the ability to communicate with other people in an honest, authentic manner. These clients were usually raised by parents who reacted badly to any display of strong emotion, even enthusiasm. They sent their children a clear message: it's inappropriate to express yourself. Put it into practice today. You are going to do a bit of introspection. You don't have to write a lengthy journal entry or subject yourself to hours of analysis, but you might come up with some useful insights. Take a piece of paper and divide it into 2 columns. At the top of each, write down the name of your 2 most important caregivers from early childhood. For most people, this will be mom and dad, but you might have been cared for by another relative or even friends of the family. Now, think about their communication styles. What did you learn from each of these individuals? Write down the beliefs they passed on to you. Do you? Day 14. Understand how different generations communicate. You've probably heard the old cliché, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. There are thousands of books and articles out there about sex differences and why men and women often misunderstand each other. But what about age differences? We don't tend to talk about the challenges that come with communicating with people from other generations. In this chapter, you'll learn more about these differences, and how you can adjust your approach depending on your audience. I'm going to focus on communication in the workplace, but this information is also useful when it comes to understanding generational differences in general. Before we go any further, I want to make it clear that everyone has their own personality and preferred communication style. It's not a good idea to assume that just because someone was born in a particular era that they will behave in a certain way. On the other hand, there are plenty of academic researchers who believe that our approach to work and relationships is partly influenced by when we were born. The generations you'll meet at work, and how to communicate with them. 1. Baby boomers, born between 1946 to 1964. These workers triggered a revolution. When they entered the workplace, women and ethnic minorities were gradually starting to take on roles that had usually been occupied by white men. They have a proactive attitude, are competitive, and value their work as much as their family life. 32. They came of age during a time of social change, and they tend to distrust authority. This isn't to say that they cannot work well with managers, just that they question power and believe that those in management positions should have to work for their status. They don't have time for aloof, Arrogant bosses. They prefer to work for people who try to understand everyone's point of view before deciding, rather than pull rank. Some are skeptical of modern working practices such as remote working and flexible hours. In this respect, they are quite traditional. Many are workaholics who believe that workplace competition is healthy and that loyalty to a company should be rewarded. They like teamwork and tend to believe that meetings are a productive use of their time. 33 Communication tips. A typical boomer will appreciate a detailed explanation of how their contribution is making a difference to the company's bottom line. They appreciate regular recognition, particularly if they devoted many years of their life to an organization. For this reason, they place more value on titles than their younger co-workers. They came of age in an era where face-to-face communication was highly valued. If you have something of importance to say to a boomer, schedule an in-person meeting. Most are perfectly capable of using email and other modern technologies, but they were raised to value face-to-face conversations. Boomers are not usually enthused by the idea of regular performance reviews or ongoing feedback. As far as they are concerned, they can do their jobs and appreciate the space in which to get their tasks done. It may be necessary to explain to a boomer that even the most competent of people can benefit from ongoing feedback, and that regular reviews do not imply that their managers believe them to be incompetent. 2. Generation X, born between 1965 to 1980, more entrepreneurial than their baby boomer predecessors. Gen Zers grew up in relatively insecure financial circumstances with fewer economic opportunities. Compared with boomers, they are more likely to prioritize a work-life balance, and to value independence. They are not especially concerned with remaining loyal to an employer. 34 On the whole, they are more skeptical about life and the workplace in general than their parents and lack the optimism and appetite for change that characterized the boomer generation. They are more comfortable using modern technology. When it comes to authority, Generation Zers respect leaders who use a confrontational management style. Compared to boomers, they are more comfortable asking and answering difficult questions in the workplace. Being more willing to switch jobs and careers rather than remaining loyal to one employer for decades, they are not so concerned with keeping the peace at work. They place more emphasis on personal freedom, and many aspire to work for themselves. Communication tips. Gen Zers like regular feedback and appreciate prompt comments and constructive criticism. They want to discover their own strengths and weaknesses and enjoy planning out their careers. They believe that successful people are lifelong learners. They are creative, often embrace change, and appreciate the opportunity to air their opinions. They do not place so much value on face-to-face communication as the previous generation, but their favored style could best be described as direct. When talking to a Gen Zer, it's best to get straight to the point. They do not have as much tolerance for meetings as the boomer generation. 3. Generation Y, born between 1981 to 1997, also known as millennials. This generation was the first to grow up with reliable access to computers and the internet. Compared with previous generations, they are happier to multitask, to get involved with multiple projects, and to take a flexible approach to work if the situation demands it. For instance, the average Gen-er will be glad to be seconded to another department or asked to apply their skills to a new area. They see work as a route to personal fulfillment and think that it's acceptable to change jobs and careers often to pursue their happiness. 35 members of this group are accustomed to digital rather than in-person communication. They like frequent feedback, and they favor leaders who invite them to give their opinions at each stage of a project. A Gen-er may well be ambitious, but they believe that a good work-life balance is important. Communication tips. This group assumes that emails, instant messages, and even social media are perfectly appropriate mediums for workplace communication. For a Gen-er, writing an email instead of making a phone call is not a sign of disrespect, it's just the norm for their generation. This group also likes to have answers quickly. If you keep them waiting, they are liable to become annoyed. Always play it straight with a Gen-er. If you can't give them feedback immediately, give them a realistic time frame and then stick to it. They are not entitled by nature, They have just grown up in a world full of information that is available day and night. They are fully capable of recognizing authority and complying with workplace rules, but they will want to know how decisions are made and why. For Generation Z, born from 1998 onwards 36, these people have grown up in a period of increased social justice ideas and movements, and they tend to place more value on inclusive communication. For example, they care passionately about transgender rights, overcoming sexism in the workplace, and other social justice issues such as racism and income inequality. 37 They have come of age in a digital culture, and are comfortable with the idea of working remotely, working online, and working for a diverse range of clients and companies. They are unlikely to work for the same boss over a long period of time. Gen Zers are aware of the privacy and security risks that come with technology. They love social media and cannot fathom life without smartphones, but they know that everything you post online lives forever. Thanks to increased globalization and easy access to information, they are more aware of their career options than previous generations. They value independence, innovation, and creativity. They grew up during a time of economic recession, so they are keen to earn a steady wage. Communication tips: inclusive communication is a good idea regardless of your audience, but it's particularly important when dealing with Gen Zers. They are the most diverse workforce America has ever seen. Specifically, over 50% of under 18s will be of a minority ethnic group or race by 2020, and company communication policies need to respect this fact. Gen Zers are eager to learn and they like to be asked for their opinions. In many respects, they are similar to millennials, but they are likely to appreciate anonymous communication and to take more care when managing their online reputation. If a topic is particularly sensitive, they might prefer to meet in person so that no trace of the conversation is left online. Put it into practice. Think about the people you work with, or the people in your social circle, who are from a different generation. Do you feel equally at ease with people much older or younger than yourself? Pick someone from another generation that you have struggled to connect with in the past. Having read this chapter, do you think that age differences might contribute to the problem? If so, your task today is to try relating to this person in a new way. Your next steps will depend on the situation. I'll give you an example. Let's say that you are working on a project with two boomers and one Gen Zer. The boomers are happy to meet every Monday, report on their progress, then return the following week with another update. However, the Gen Zer seems to feel as though the group isn't offering them enough guidance. Bearing in mind that Gen Zers tend to value ongoing feedback, you might decide to check in with them every couple of days instead. This would show respect for their preferred communication styles and result in more harmonious work relationships. Day 15. Master the art of communicating via email. Almost everyone uses email and social media nowadays, both for professional and personal purposes. It's easy, free, and allows lots of room for creative expression. However, you need to be careful. Text-based messages can be misinterpreted, sometimes with devastating consequences. If you are sending emails on behalf of a company, you could end up in a lot of trouble if they cause any offense. Here's a shocking statistic: we misjudge the tone and meaning of the emails we receive up to 50% of the time. Worse, most of us believe that we can accurately figure out a sender's underlying message. 38 In this section, you'll learn how to get the tone right every time. Here are the basic rules of writing effective emails that will get your message across. 1. If the other person is in a senior position, mirror their tone. If your boss opens and closes with a few formal words, you should do the same. If they start signing off with a simple yours, or regards, feel free to follow their lead. Otherwise, assume that you should use formal business language. To make it easy for the recipient to clarify any points raised, if you are contacting someone about a complex issue, or you need to share a lot of information, provide them with some other means of getting back to you. This is especially important if you are working on a time-sensitive document or project. If any new developments come to light, how can they contact you? Make sure they have your phone number as well as your email address. 3. Don't fire off requests.